The 3DS has quickly become a great system for anyone who spent the generation collecting games, and an annoying, almost unapproachable system for newcomers. Prices around the handheld have continued to climb over the last few years, now peaking well above the original MSRP price for one that's in okay condition. The games have also seen rising prices, mostly since the eShop was shuttered on the platform, leaving the physical market as the only access to legitimate copies of games, letting third-party sellers determine the pricing. However, despite all of this, there is some good news, since not only has the homebrew community come a long way for this unique handheld for the games, it also makes it a lot easier to find a 3DS system for cheaper, and today I'm going to be talking about my new 3DS XL that I recently picked up here in 2025, and how changing up a few things made this a much more capable system. So to start, I wanted to find a new 3DS XL that had dual IPS screens. For a time, Nintendo shipped 3DS systems with these IPS LCDs versus the TN LCD panels that are in the vast majority of the handhelds from this generation. The IPS panels have better viewing angles, contrast, and color compared to the TN counterpart, and in turn are more sought after. It's sort of luck of the draw unless the seller points it out in the listing, which of course then drives up the price. I was already aware of this, and rather than try to figure out if the seller's pictures were showing an IPS panel or not, I decided to go with one that labeled it as such and eat the higher cost just to be sure. Also, double check that it lists both screens as IPS displays, since Nintendo did mix and match screen types for top and bottom, even at times on the same model. The catch here, though, is I went with the new 3DS LL from Japan. These tend to be cheaper than a US-based system by at times up to $100. I did this before with another video where I found a new 3DS system, but this time I wanted to really narrow it down and go for the larger system with the better screens. I'm also not concerned about the condition of the outside of the system either. As long as the displays and inside portion look solid, we're good to go. After about a week, the 3DS came in and actually looked pretty good. The top did have a fair amount of blemishes along with the back, but inside, it turned out fine, and there were minimal to no scratches on the screens. Even the analog slider stick looked decent. I found top and bottom replacement casings online that I figured would be an easy swap to clean the system up, and from what I'm seeing, should make it look almost new. The back panel is pretty straightforward, and everyone who has owned one of these has probably removed it at some point in time to swap SD cards. It's just held on with a couple of Phillips head screws, but wouldn't you know it, the shell from eBay didn't line up great and even had some fitment issues around the power button. Some shoddy cutting work here for sure, and I decided to stick with the original rough looking back for now. Hopefully I can have better luck with the top panel. There are 4 Phillips head screws hidden around the top screen by what are basically just stickers. Sometimes they become brittle and will break apart if you try to remove them, which I recommend some tweezers for, but anything with a point that can wedge underneath should be fine. You can apply some heat here, just some hot air, but I already see this going wrong for most people, and they accidentally put a spot or something on the top screen from too much heat. So I recommend doing the best you can without the heat. And if the cover breaks apart, pick up some new ones on Amazon. Mine, for example, did break as I went, and I already had some light gray covers from a different 3DS project, so I just used them as replacements. They're not expensive, and if you're unsure about using heat, just spend a couple of bucks on replacements and avoid the risk altogether. Anyway, the 4 screws come out, and the top shell unlocks by sliding it up towards the top, and then it pulls away. The replacement shell slots back in and then slides down to lock into place, with the 4 screws going back in and then the covers. That's it for the top screen shell replacement, which leaves me with a nice looking new 3DS XL, at least from the top. The next part involves changing the region of the 3DS, which has become much easier over time, and using just an SD card and a PC to transfer files, I went from the Japan 3DS here to a US 3DS. It took about 20 minutes or so to do, and while there are a bunch of steps at first glance, it's a really in-depth guide that basically treats you like an idiot, which I can appreciate. It's a process that is outlined well, and it's hard to mess up if you follow it correctly, but here's your obligatory do this at your own risk, you can brick your system, etc. The big drawback from what I could tell with switching regions on a 3DS had to do with losing eShop access, which isn't a big deal now since Nintendo took care of that for us. So now with this new 3DS XL, it will act like any other US-based system that, of course, is able to load Homebrew on top of that. I mentioned the Homebrew around the 3DS has really continued to evolve over the years, and it's in an impressive place now. Sure, changing the entire region and language for a console is useful, but that's just scratching the surface. I'm not really breaking new ground here or anything since it's been covered at length here on YouTube, but now more than ever, it seems extremely relevant with access to many games being completely removed after the eShop shutdown. I've asked people since then how they feel about something like the HShop existing, and the answer has mostly been the same across the board. If Nintendo doesn't care to sell the games to me anymore, why should I care to spend more to the second-hand market when the money isn't going to the publishers anyway? See, the HShop is an application that acts as a free store for the 3DS. As soon as you click open, you're greeted with endless amounts of games, DLC, and updates. There are homebrew games along with kiosk demos, which are fun to go through, but by and large, this app is used for downloading retail games for free. And while I do see the explanation of bowing to the second-hand market as trying to justify what's less of a morally gray area, I don't think they're completely wrong here either. There are many titles that were only available digitally on the eShop for the 3DS or DSiWare that relied on digital distribution. The 3DS, it's now 14 years old, but it really doesn't feel old enough to cut off the shop already, especially when Sony still has the PS3 and Vita stores live. I guess the response to the HShop debate would simply be, you should have bought the games when the store was around, but I don't think that would hold up as the years go on and new gamers take interest in what is simply a very unique system to play. It's one thing if you want to recommend DS games, since there was never really a digital storefront for it. Chrono Trigger is an awesome game on the DS, but I also understand it's generally over $100 to go out and buy. Actually, there's a little known trick here. Chrono Trigger in particular will change its language based on the region of your DS, so if you import it from Japan for cheaper and pop it into your system, it should come up fully in English. I haven't tried this on a 3DS. I just remember a person came into the store way back when one time and was big in importing games and showed me that it worked on the DS Lite. The 3DS scene is getting crazier with more sought after games like Dragon Quest, Metal Gear Solid, and others getting well over $100 on eBay. These sorts of prices are obviously going to push people towards something like HShop, especially if they're more inclined to buy digital anyway. So yes, I spent the last few minutes attempting to rationalize the HShop for people to use, but also hopefully pointed out how poor Nintendo can be when it comes to preserving their more unique platforms and keeping access to their legacy titles. It seems like Nintendo's strategy recently is to put the fear into people even discussing Homebrew or Emulation. And unless you hold up today's newspaper and the game case in the background, you'll get your video pulled down. I mean, come on, Nintendo. You can't be beaten out by Sony when Jim Ryan laughed and asked who even wanted to play Gran Turismo on the PS1. Even he backpedaled on the idea of shutting down legacy stores, which I can't believe are still open to this day. It is fun to explore the homebrew games and ports like Quake 2, Half-Life. Hey, look. They even got Space Cadet Pinball on here. It's pretty impressive to see what people have been able to get running on the new 3DS, even taking advantage of the faster processor with Vice City or GTA 3. You know what's funny? Since getting back into 3DS stuff again, I've been more interested in the weird ports over anything else. Like, what even is Captain America on the 3DS? Oh, okay, apparently it's a 3D action beat-em-up, which is a little anticlimactic on that one. How about Transformers Rise of the Darkspark? It's a strategy RPG with interactive turn-based battles that play out in 3D with action commands. See, that's what I'm talking about. I want the weird ports that try to do their own thing. The DS library, that one's infamous for this, but the 3DS has its fair share of titles like this as well. Anyway, the market for the 3DS keeps going up, and it probably won't be coming down anytime soon, especially since handheld systems tend to dwindle down faster since they spent a lot of their life on the go with their durability being tested. Still, it's good to be able to widen your searches with imported systems from Japan, and if you're not specifically needing a new 3DS, the standard launch model can be had for almost $100 in good condition. And finally, to close out, I'll rapid fire off 5 cool things you can do with your newly homebrew-enabled 3DS. To start, you can play online now, despite Nintendo shutting down servers using Pretendo. Mario Kart specifically is extremely active with players. You can back up your save file from cartridges or downloaded games and keep them safe, stored off of your system, and inversely, you can also import save files that people post online, like 100% files. Arctic Base is an app that lets you broadcast your 3DS cartridge or download to an emulator, and will even let you use the handheld as a controller for your PC when playing. Emulation for older titles is alive on the 3DS, with RetroArch being available, along with hardware-based emulation for the Game Boy Advance, letting you run those games natively using OpenAGP Firm. And finally, NetPass is a new version of Street Pass where you don't have to leave the house to cross paths with other 3DS owners. It's all done virtually and is basically required after the fall of cargo shorts. But let me know what you think about the 3DS now in 2025, with Homebrew keeping things alive even after Nintendo shut down the eShop. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.